Fear. It's what drives real estate prices to go up. It also drives real estate prices to go down based on supply and demand, of course. So where are we right now in our economy? Well, obviously we're in a place of a lot of fear. And why? Well, there's been a lot of changes to real estate over the last couple years. The affordability is gone. And if there's no affordability, does that mean that prices will fall? And I don't think so. And I'll explain more about that and what is possible as we move forward in this economy of fear. Well, when it comes to fear, I have never seen more self-made millionaires from real estate from those that embrace fear, embrace the idea of fear, because they don't follow the narrative that everyone else is following. And that's basically someone that becomes a multimillionaire, someone that doesn't follow the narrative that everyone else is trying to support. So let's just talk about where we are right now. Obviously, we're in an economy of fear. There's a lot of issues going on, a lot of concerns. If you're looking at real estate, you're saying, well, the interest rate has doubled in less than 2 years. Insurance has become a crisis here in Florida, and property taxes. And real estate is not affordable, or as affordable as it was. And if real estate's not affordable, then the price has to go down, right? Well, no, I don't agree with that, and I'll explain why. But just look at the narrative of where we are right now. Be afraid, be very afraid. A lot of bad things are going to happen, and are happening, are going to happen. And is that true? It could be, but it's also a very short perspective of the overall picture of what is possible and how to look at real estate from a big perspective of how to get in the marketplace at the right time and hold on to assets that are good assets that will make you good money. So we just came out of a very fearful place where real estate prices just shot way up. And that was called FOMO, fear of missing out. When property values go up so much that if you don't buy, you're going to miss out. You're not going to get to buy real estate. And that's what drove the real estate prices up. And they drove up so much in our area. Now in Florida, what was strange to us is we saw a whole different market that we hadn't seen ever, at least since I've been in the market, and that was the California market. We had more California money coming into the Florida market than I've ever seen, of people coming into Florida that had a lot of money, and our property values were so inexpensive from their market that the prices, they didn't think much of paying what they did. And it was very difficult. We had homes literally selling $100,000 over list price with 18 offers in 2 days, and it was insane. And is that a normal situation? That's extremely abnormal. That's a fear market. It's a FOMO market. And after you experience that situation, what could possibly go wrong? Well, here we are, right? And we're seeing adjustments, and they need to adjust because there was too much craziness from a couple years ago, and a lot of people made some bad decisions in that FOMO market. And yes, they're going to get hurt if they look at this from a short-term perspective instead of a big perspective. Because if you are in a house right now and you have a 2% mortgage, and you're in a good place. You should be, right? As long as you don't need to sell, have to sell, and your payments are at a good level, even if the value is less than what you paid for it, the affordability is much greater. Plus the idea that, I don't think these 2% mortgages will ever come back. I do think rates could come down, but if you have a low interest rate mortgage, you're probably not going to sell your house, right? So the FOMO market caused prices to go up too fast, too quick, and now they're adjusting. And I can relate to a situation in my neighborhood. There was a house that had been on the market 4 years, and truthfully, I think it was a very ugly house. And in that time period, it was listed through multiple agents. It was on and off again on the market for about 4 years. And it was also one of the highest priced homes, and it just wasn't presented well. Well, the pandemic hit, and there was a lot of fear. First off, the fear was that everything is going to go down quickly. And I know some very smart people in that time period that sold their real estate because they thought at that point that the property values could never go beyond where they are. We know we're going into bad times. Businesses are closing. There's loss of jobs. So of course, the market should go down. Well, a lot of us know that's not what happened. We had a lot of government stimulus checks, and the market completely changed on us. And instead of going down in that period of fear, the fear became FOMO fear, where Florida in particular, properties were selling so quickly and properties went up so much. So my neighbor's house on the market 4 years in the 600 price point, can't sell it. Right after pandemic, he puts it on the market, it sells the first day. And we're amazed, like, okay, there's a new high sale, 600. New buyer buys a property, she improves the property, they do a fantastic job, they paint it white, they put a new roof on it, they stage it, it looks fantastic, goes on the market, sells for 1.2 million. Then the next home in the neighborhood sells for 1.4 million. And as neighbors, we're like, what happened here? I mean, we were at 500,000 a year and a half ago. Now we're over a million. We're hitting 1.4 million in all this period. And everyone was talking about, should we sell our home? We know this is a great time to sell, but the biggest fear factor was, if we sell our home, where are we going to go? What else are we going to buy? Because it's a terrible time to buy a house right now when you're competing against 18 other buyers to buy one property. But timing was critical. Well, now that FOMO fear is gone, that caused property values to go up so fast, so quickly, we have been in more of a stable, adjusting market, and there's a lot of fear that we're going to see things absolutely collapse. Is this true? As I mentioned, subject to a lot of factors. Now, real estate, of course, is not across the board. It doesn't happen evenly in every market, and I think that's the perception that people are missing, is that quality of real estate has an impact on property values. So I'm reflecting back to a point when we lived in California and my parents had our home on the market, and you could go Google back and see there was a point where interest rates were 20%. Is that insane? And when rates are 20%, the only way to sell real estate is for people to either carry the mortgage or assume your mortgage that's not 20%. And that's what was happening, is homes were still selling. People still wanted to buy homes, but when the rates actually went to 20%, you would think that would absolutely stop the market. And I recall that time period very well because, as I mentioned, my parents were trying to sell the home. At that point in history, real estate was taking longer to sell because it was challenging to navigate how to buy a home in a 20% interest market, but homes were selling. And my parents did sell their home. But it was an awkward time because I remember when they sold that we saw a new dynamic. There was no affordability. So if there's no affordability, how can you buy a home? Well, there was the house across the street from where we lived in California was purchased by two men. Two men bought the home, and they were both single, and they both had girlfriends, and they bought the home jointly, and one couple lived on one side of the house and the other couple lived on the other side. So it took two families, in essence, to buy a house. And then I saw a situation where it took three families to buy a house, where three families with a lot of kids went in, purchased a home. One family actually lived in the garage, one lived in the kitchen living room, and the other one lived in the bedrooms. But it took three families to purchase a home. And I remember my mom saying, look, I don't know how property values could ever go higher than they are now because it's just not affordable. How can property values keep going up when people can't even afford to buy a house? Well, we lived in Santa Barbara, which was an absolutely beautiful area, very desirable area. That home that sold for about $150 is now worth about $1.5 million, and property values adjusted in the 06, 09, but they went back up. And even in this time of challenging markets, I can watch the value on that house and it's still increasing. And why is that house still increasing when we're seeing so many bad things? Because it's all about the location of that house. It's in a great location. And even in bad times, people still want to live in the best areas that they can afford, right? And if money's not an issue, the best areas survive. So it wasn't an affordability factor. Because the home wasn't affordable doesn't mean that the property value had to go down because of the location. And that's the same issue when we look at Florida. A lot of people are looking at Florida and saying property values have to go down. Property values are not affordable. And again, to that I would say, where are we talking in Florida? Because it is a location market. There are areas even here in Sarasota, we're not seeing rapid decline in any way. In fact, right now in Sarasota, we have 2 of the biggest sales under contract in a market where a lot of people think this is a bad market. It's not a bad market if you're in the right location. So it gets back to the idea of fear. When is the time to buy? The time to buy real estate is when everyone else wants to sell, right? So the inventory of housing right now is better than I have seen it in probably a decade. And this means it's a good time to buy. There's a lot of selection out there right now. And a lot of people think, well, the inventory is going to continue to increase. To a certain point, yes, but there's a point where it's going to break. And do we know when that time is? I don't have that crystal ball, so no, I don't. But I can say right now, inventory is very good in Florida. There's a lot of choices, especially in nice areas where we're at. So look at crisis mode as an opportunity to buy property. Are we in crisis mode? There's the narrative that we are, don't buy real estate. And I say, wait a minute, think through that a little bit. If you are looking to buy a property, when should you buy? When it's right for you. Everyone's decision is different, but you don't want to buy when there's no inventory. You're going to pay too much typically. And when there's a lot of inventory, you're going to be able to select the right property. So as I walk along the Sarasota Bayfront, I think about one of the best opportunities I ever saw that was fear-based in buying real estate in Sarasota. And that's in reference to a condominium that's right behind me, a tower that was right on the Sarasota Bayfront, known as the Essex House. Now, I had sold a unit in there some time ago, and then many years later, I had a owner come into my office and tell me that she wants to sell her unit, and found out exactly the story, having a listing in that unit. And I had been in the unit and understood what the problem was. And the narrative, or the simple story of that, was the owner came home. There was a foundation crack, I understand, on the 4th floor, called management, and they called the fire department, and the building was evacuated. And it stayed empty for years. And it was that fear, it was the unknown, what's going to happen. Now the owners, even though they did not live in that unit anymore, they had to still pay the taxes, insurance, and the HOA fees, plus the pending assessment. The assessment initially to fix that building was about $90,000 per unit owner, and there was other series of unknowns that was going to happen after that point. Well, you can imagine the fear that took place for the property owners in that building. Those units were selling in the 300 plus price point, and in all this fear, commotion, not being able to live in there, having an assessment that if you did not pay, the unit would be foreclosed, they went down to $30,000. And at that point, that was a fantastic time to buy in the Essex House. So, you look at fear-based buying, sometimes those were good, because the owners that bought those in the 30s, paid the special assessment, waited out the years, now have a unit in this building on Sarasota Bayfront that's worth substantially more than what they were worth before it was fixed up. And it's been said that this is actually one of the best constructed buildings now on the Bayfront because of what they had to do. So think about that. The people that bought in the fear-based market time, bought a unit in there, did really well, because now they have a restored unit. It's priced substantially more than the market was at that point. And some owners actually bought those for $30,000 plus assessment. So I see that same opportunity right now. This is a good time to buy in Florida for a condominium because of what happened on the East Coast in Surfside, where a condo collapsed. The state of Florida came in and said, wait a minute, found out a lot of these condo associations in Florida have not kept up with the reserves. They don't have the money in reserve to fix and maintain the building, and demanded that that be done. So with the reserves and the requirement to fix up a lot of condos, a lot of these owners in the state of Florida are being hit with enormous assessments, some in the excess of $100,000 to restore their condo. Now, a lot of buyers would say, that's not where I want to live. That's an opportunity for a buyer, just like it was here in Sarasota, where you can buy a condominium now, in essence, sometimes right on the beach, substantially below what it was selling for. The owner has an assessment that has to be accounted for. You do the math. If it was a $1 million condo, it has a $100,000 assessment. Doesn't mean that it's going to sell for $900. It's probably going to sell for less than that. But once that's restored, then you as the new homeowner get the benefit of going into a property that's completely been fixed up. So this condo crisis, on top of everything else, looks like a bad situation, because the condo crisis is obviously increasing the inventory of housing as well. With the new law of what happened on the East Coast, I see that as a huge opportunity to buy in Florida right now. Because when do you want to buy real estate? You want to buy when people need to sell, when there's a crisis mode, when there's fear. And there is some fear in different properties. So I am fortunate, as I mentioned, I am in Sarasota. This is a beautiful place. I recently did a video that took me about well over 100 hours to make, and I spent a lot of time just studying the best parts of Sarasota, the 10 best things to do, and why it's such a nice area. And why I feel real strong, having lived in Santa Barbara and seeing the property values go up, even though they're not affordable. The affordability was not an issue in property values not going up, because if you have an area that people want to live in, you're in a desirable location, that doesn't change, and that will make property values, that will be the strongest position to be in a market, especially in the unknown. Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? Don't have that crystal ball, but I do know that areas where people want to live are always, in most cases, a very safe investment. And if you find a crisis opportunity, such as the condo market right now in Florida, I think is a good time for buyers, because we're seeing a lot of inventory. The assessments are known, they're disclosed. Good opportunity for somebody to do the math, buy now at this opportunity. So anyway, is fear a good thing? It's a good thing if you're an investor, because when's a good time to buy? When people want to sell. When's a good time to sell? When people want to buy. We already went through this FOMO period. Now we're in this different cycle where we're seeing a lot of inventory. I think this is a great time to buy if you buy the right property, and you're going to find it with a lot of inventory. But if you buy the right property, look at it from the long perspective of holding on to that asset, the probability is you're going to do real well on it. So in closing, I hope I've been helpful to you. As I mentioned, I've been here in the Sarasota market for over 40 years. I do travel the whole state. I know the Florida market pretty well. As a broker owner of Realty One, our corporate company has 29 offices. So if you're looking for real estate anywhere in Florida, I have a resource to help you with that. I appreciate your time here, and I wish you well.